Hey everybody, it's Booksy here for a December 8th update on AMC Fractal analysis. So yesterday was really interesting, and today was really interesting. Yesterday we had that big push. It started looking like what I call the T3 setup, which is a strength setup. It's designed to sort of push you past some barriers, and we settled right on the fib for the region, which is the 0.5. And that fib is the one that's drawn from, well, that's not helpful at all. Can't see it. Well, it's drawn from down here at $1.92 all the way up to $60.96. And then when it happens to be drawn correctly, you'll see it it crosses right here at the 0.5. In addition to that, the move that we saw today, it looks like it's trying to retrace down to the 618, and both the 618 and the macro 0.5 intersect right here on this channel. And if you were to draw from this dip to this dip, it doesn't look like it intercepts very well. But if you draw to this one, it is quite convincing that we're just going to drop down and hit it tomorrow and bounce. Now, there are only two scenarios at this point, like every day. There's a bearish and a bullish scenario. Based on the fractals, though, because that's what you're here for, if the fractals, if we break through, which I think would be tough, but if we broke through tomorrow, it would have to be an immense amount of sell pressure. We would bounce basically around 29 or close to it. Could be a little more of an angle. And then this would become a shoulder, and then we would head down. We talked about this already. It would basically look like this region where you're going to sort of walk down and do T-test lower. And my guess was that it was going to be that 2447, 2450 area, which is more or less the official 618. Doesn't have to be. And we talked about how this might be plenty close, right? And that I'm a human, I have human error. It could be even closer. But that would be the bearish scenario, would be a head and shoulder down. Bullish scenario is kind of a head and shoulder up. So I've been talking to a lot of people today about different things, and I was posting about it somewhat on Twitter. But one thing that's been catching my eye about these head and shoulders is that the shoulder itself is fairly sharp. And it's especially on like a big down move. So like the best move we have to compare is the move from way back when we first got up to these levels. This move right here, which was in June, down into the B4. And in this region, you can see that it's quite strong, you know. And I wanted to show you also briefly the MACD for this, because I think it's curious, and I just wanted to show you if I can get it to load. There we go. Looked like I wasn't doing anything, but I was trying to select something, but it wasn't working. My computer was lagging. Okay. Let's go back to the 4 hour. So you see how steep this is, right? It's this very steep hook. And in this hook, you actually have a setup that looks a lot like the T3 and then another one. And we've seen this close up. It's a little bit of a mess, but basically it's just a channel run, nothing really fancy. And then it sort of sets up for this move, and then it's even a bigger setup, and that becomes your shoulder later on in this kind of awkward looking head and shoulder pattern. Go to the 4 hour. I just wanted to point something out. So when we talk about fractals, we're not just talking about, you know, what you're seeing on the screen with price action, although that's part of it. Everything with fractals is three-dimensional, right? You've got the fractal itself, which is this sort of pattern that's going to play out. You have volume, and then you also have time. And time, volume, and the fractal pattern itself are all working like together to sort of give you what you see in this price action. So I want you to look at this really quick and then look at this. So you see how, I mean, we were way, we were way overextended, but by technical standards, right? But just look at this red region. It's crazy. But see this right here? All right, we got this cross. Now, where did the cross happen? Right on the head and shoulder. All right, so where did the cross happen? Right on the head and shoulder. So we are on point. Now, does that mean it's going to come down and then come down again, come down and then come down again? I think there's a strong case for saying no. And I'm going to show you why. But I'm just happy that we called out some values yesterday in the last video, and it was pretty dang close. I think we were like 20 cents off or something. Pretty awesome. We might get there tomorrow. All right, now I'm going to switch over here, and let's just talk about tomorrow. And then I've got one more thing to show you before we part ways. So first of all, this is the 0.5 on the macro. This is the 618 on this move. So the 618 and the 0.5 intercept with the channel. So that's a really huge resistance spot, in my opinion. And then, you know, I think you're going to have a lot of buyers step in right there for a push up. There's only a couple scenarios. Again, as always, there's the bullish and the bearish. Bearish would be somehow it breaks through here with just an immense amount of sell pressure. If that were to happen, I would be a little bit surprised, I'm not going to lie, at this point, because it's already pushed up past this, this 0.5. And if you remember, this is a Wyckoff over here. And so this would be an SOS. So it already got out of the range. And this is a sign of strength. So it would be very unusual for it to break through that 3130 area tomorrow. But if it did, you would see something like a head and shoulder, right, form, and then it would probably just like walk down, and it would look very much like this, but in reverse, and possibly a little slower and or faster, right? We don't know. But then a head and shoulder upward, what would that look like? This would be the shoulder. You're probably still going to get that drop in the morning, more than likely. The shoulder or the head itself would be a pretty significant move. And I'm imagining it could go as far as this other fib, possibly break out of this channel. If it didn't break out of the channel, maybe we could say it's more sideways. It doesn't really make any difference. I think the idea of a shoulder, if it plays out like this, would be that the shoulder would break the channel instead of breaking like way back down to the bottom of the other shoulder. That would be unusual just based on where we are right now. If anything, it may come back maybe, and it would have to be like this. It would come back to this level to retest and perhaps start consolidating for a t-test. That'd be fine, you know. It could do it there, or it could do it at a higher level. I'm not going to try to make that prediction right yet because I really am curious to see what happens tomorrow with how this all plays out. And I don't particularly care to make a whole lot of predictions anyways at this point because we're still just learning about the rules of the fractal. And that's where I want to end the video today. If you go, if you are looking at this from a Fibonacci channel point of view, and I use Fib and all these other crazy things when I'm analyzing, but mostly just to see if I can find relationships between one fractal and another to see sort of where it appears. And I noticed that in this channel, and I know it's not drawn perfectly, but in this channel, these regions where you get this sort of barcoding almost, okay, it looks like that. I would say they're more or less just accumulation zones, right? And then you have distribution. So you have accumulation here, and perhaps here and here. Then you have distribution more or less. And there's some accumulation going on. You can tell it's rattling around. We are at low prices historically right now from the last year for AMC. since June, right? So, but I'd noticed particularly these regions between the 236 and the 382. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go test on some other regions. And I started finding that that's pretty consistent on these downturns, that you have sort of like catches, right, at the between the 236 and the 382, which is fairly interesting. And then you get these dips down all the way to the 0 value. And as I started playing around with this, I noticed that if you draw from the top of the B4 move to the bottom and you use the double tap on the bottom, now there's different ways to draw this. You could consider this the double tap on the bottom, or you consider this and this the double tap on the bottom, which changes this chart a little bit for sure. But I was trying to do it as consistently as possible. And what I noticed is that this shoulder was actually like a breakout of this channel. And I'm not sure why I didn't notice it before, but I just didn't. So I went and tested, and sure enough, the 236 and the 382, you had these pretty high activity regions. Now I know that if you're looking at this, you're like, well, that's the same thing. And I'm like, yeah, but it specifically likes to sort of catch and spend some time in these areas. And that's all I'm noticing. That's all I'm pointing out. And it moves pretty fast through some of these other areas. So again, the two bottoms, the top, and then there's the shoulder breaking out. This is a tiny one, but I think it counts. This one may actually be part of this larger move. I'm playing around with some ideas. I don't want to get into that right now, but yeah, you can see that same deal. The head and shoulder was the breakout of the result of this B4. So looking at where we were now, I was saying, okay, well, this is cool. I actually think this confirms a lot. And this is where I brought up that 34 on Twitter. I was just saying that, hey, look, I noticed this thing happens. It seems pretty consistent. So maybe the shoulder hasn't even formed yet. And even today, it didn't quite get up there. It's back, not past the 1. It's also possible that human error, and I'm drawing it a little incorrectly. So that's a possibility as well. And I'm just saying that because when we see this play out, I think the head is going to be really obvious compared to the shoulder. Today, it definitely was a bigger move than yesterday, but was it the head of the head and shoulder? I'm not sure. I don't really think so. We're going to end up right back here, right? So it makes sense if we broke out and either that's the shoulder and then we form the head, right? Or that's the head. So this is a new possible rule. I'm going to keep exploring it, keep trying out some different things, see if I can identify a more sure way to do it instead of kind of eyeballing it. But that's all I got for you today. Hope you all have a good one, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.